The following program is presented by the Metropolitan Library Service Agency.
Hello, welcome to All About Kids, a program focusing on the interests of children and young people and some of the issues affecting them. Many children are involved in Hennepin County juvenile court proceedings, often for reasons beyond their control. Some of these children may come from abuse or neglect situations. They may be living in foster care situations because their own parents cannot provide for them. During the court proceedings, Hennepin County Juvenile Court appoints volunteers called guardian ad litems who represent the interests of the children during the court proceedings. Our guest today, volunteer coordinator Lynn MacBean of the Hennepin County Guardian Ad Litem program, and volunteers Terry Flynn and Jennifer Pierson, will be talking a little bit about the Guardian program and discussing some of the reasons why they believe this is an excellent child advocacy program. Lynn, Terry, Jennifer, it's a pleasure to have you with us today, and we're going to be talking a lot about the Guardian Ad Litem program and some of the things, Terry and Jennifer, that you're doing as volunteers working with young people in our community. And Lynn, as a staff person in the Guardian office, please give us a little overview of the program. I know you've got some statistics there.
Sure.
Where did it come from? Who funds it? Who's involved?
Well, we're a program of Hennepin County. I should maybe start out by explaining the name Guardian Ad Litem because people usually don't know what that means. The name is Latin, Guardian Ad Litem. It means guardian for the suit. And we work with children and families who are involved in juvenile court. And the children that we work with are abused or neglected or have special needs. And they're involved in the court because of that abuse or neglect. So the children that we work with are victims. They're there because their parents have done something or have neglected to do something to them.
And they can be anything from newborns through 16, 17, 18?
Newborns through age 18, any age. And Terry and Jennifer are both volunteers in our program. A little bit of background, the program began in 1978. So we've been around about 12 years in the juvenile court. And I do have a couple statistics that will tell you how we've grown. We began with 15 volunteers on 34 cases in 1978, serving 45 children. And in 1989, we had 173 volunteers active on 770 cases, and we served almost 1,500 children.
What happened to cause this enormous increase?
I think people became more aware of abuse and neglect. It came out of the closet into the community. People were aware that this was going on. We had mandatory reporting laws, and schools saw kids that were abused, doctors saw kids that were abused, neighbors saw kids that were abused, relatives saw kids that were abused, and people began to report.
It was one of the unique things about this program in Hennepin County, the fact that the people who are working with the children are volunteers rather than social workers or rather than regular county staff.
Absolutely. And Terry and Jennifer, as I said, are both volunteers. And
what kind of training do you two go through as volunteers? You must have to have some kind of specialized knowledge so that you're effective when you are helping the children.
Well, don't go ahead. I was going to say, it starts off with about 40, 50 hours of classroom study that we have.
And that's provided by the county?
By the county, and that lasted, 4 to 6 weeks, something like that.
What are some of the things they talk to you about during the training?
Oh, it's everything, everything. It starts out, the legal system, how the program works, the history of it. Gee, you get a training book, it's about the size of a footstool.
It kind of walks you through the whole entire case, and you have case study, if you want to call it that, where you'll read through and study various cases that have gone through before the courts, and you'll read on this and you'll discuss it, and it kind of shows you the A to Z from the time you'd begin a case until the time you'd actually get through with the case, and that's basically what the training is all about. And then from there, they kind of turn you loose.
We also bring in speakers that talk about different aspects of the program. We bring in attorneys, we bring in minority advocates, we bring in social workers that talk about what their jobs are, and we talk about how to advocate, how to interview kids, how to interview parents. We talk about the different stages of child development, what's normal and what's not, and what may be happening to these kids, cultural differences. So it's
And you also become friends with the children
Yeah.
along the way.
During the training?
Well, no, after you start getting their
After
faces.
you start, yes. You do a lot, another thing I was going to say, you do a lot of role playing in the training, which helps a lot to get out there when you're set free.
Are you working with
Take on your
experienced
first case.
volunteers too at that point? Do they tell you some of the things that they've gone
Some,
through?
they bring in some.
They bring in speakers.
They bring in guardians that are active already. And
How long have you been a volunteer, Terry?
A little over a year.
And Jennifer?
about 20 months.
So give us an example without violating the privacy of the child, but an example of something that you've worked on.
Okay. It's probably the most common type of case also, and it has to do with drugs. A situation where both the parents are drug addicts, a father's a dealer. The police came in and arrested both of the parents, removed the children from the home, put them in St. Joseph's. And then, of course, the county has a case then against the parents. We've also found from there that there was a lot of abuse and neglect with the children. And then from St. Joseph's, the children were put in different foster homes. And then from the time that the children were placed in St. Joseph's on a hold, that's the time that I took on this one particular case. But it's very typical. And it's a matter of getting to know the children and hearing what they have to say. And so you do spend a fair amount of time with the kids. And you also spend some time with the parents, because it's nice to find out from what their side of it is. They always have a side.
What's the reaction? Do you get resentment on either side? Do they think you're a do-gooder or a...
Actually, it's not bad, because in our situation, we're only on the side of the child. I'm not on the side of the family. I'm not on the side of the parents. I'm not for or against the parents unless they are abusing the kids. And it comes across as that, hey, I don't care what you do to certain degrees as long as it does not interfere with or hurt the children. And I am the protector of the children or the advocate of the children. So you gain a certain amount of respect even though they don't really like you, because they consider you one of the people that are, that is against them in this whole program. But it does gain some respect.
Do the children ever use you to get back at the parents, or?
I don't, I suppose it could happen. I don't think it has. What has been helpful is after you get to know the children, oftentimes you'll get a parent that'll try to coax the children into saying what they should be saying to help the parent in court. So on a visitation or something, they may sit and tell the children that, hey, if you tell the people what the truth really is, then possibly we'll be split up forever and so forth. So you've got to get close enough to the children so that the children know what they should be doing is telling the truth. And it's not that the children are in court, because most of the time they're not, but it's a matter of using their testimony and things that they have said and trying to distinguish what is the true truth. And that's what it does pay to get to know the children fairly well. And in our situation, we have the time to do that, probably better than most people do.
Certainly better than social workers whose caseloads are just overburdened.
Well, you work with a social worker.
Yeah.
You really form a good team, I think. I've had some terrific social workers, and I've had other kinds also, obviously. But you really become a team, and they very much appreciate. I think that's one thing going into the program, wondering how I was going to be accepted by the professionals that were working with the children. And I've had nothing but respect, and it makes the job so much easier.
Well, it would seem that you're helping to make their jobs easier too.
You
You're
are.
really being there as a child
Yeah.
advocate.
But
So neither of you had a background though in social service or child development. You are just people who are very interested in some type of community service, and this is what you chose.
Pretty much, I've had a background. I've worked with children for a long time and with and counseling women. So I also find I kind of slip into that a little bit with the mothers, maybe becoming not an advocate, not counseling them, but realizing their problems and where they come in from, and much less ready to condemn them for instance, and to advocate for their healthiness along with the children, whether the children return to them or not. That's something that just happens naturally for me.
That's an interesting situation that's developing with people who are working with children. I think even in Minneapolis we're seeing a growing underclass, if we'll use that word, of people who have so few alternatives for getting out of poverty, and the lives of many of these children must be just real desperate from your perspective.
Well, I think this is something that the average person doesn't really understand, because the average person who lives, say, in your suburbs or whatever, pick on them, they've got their jobs, they've got their family, they have the routine type of life, and they don't really always realize that there's another segment of our society that really doesn't have the hope and they don't have the dreams, and they're kind of becoming a lost part of our society, I think. And the children are getting swept up in this, and they don't have the role models that maybe we would have had when we were young, and they don't have some of the advantages that maybe we would have had when we were young.
So that old pull yourself up by your bootstrap ethic is not really very viable today.
Well, it really isn't, because oftentimes a person will think, well, I made it on my own, and my father made it on his own, and so forth, so these kids should be able to do the same thing. After all, we do provide education for them and so forth. But again, we had some role models, and we had a different culture that we grew up in, and oftentimes these children don't have the proper role models. Maybe the role model in some areas of the city happens to be the drug dealer on the corner that's making a lot of money driving a big car, where their father, who maybe did work at once upon a time, brought home a small wage, if any, at all, and they can see where the crime pays, where working hard doesn't, and so it's a matter of changing attitudes. So,
I think you as a male volunteer could provide a real good role model for some of these kids.
I guess that's part of what you do to the kids. You try to explain to them, if you can reach them, is that they do need an education, number one, and that there are other alternatives to life than what they have seen, and you try to expose them to a little bit of that, and show them that there is a way that they can pull themselves up too, but they're just going to have to do it a little bit tougher, a little harder than what the average kid's going to have to. And some of these kids are really sharp. I mean, it's really a shame, because if they'd be put into a different environment, they could be some of the leaders in our society eventually, instead of maybe some of the drudges of our society, which they may become. So maybe you have a shot. And you're not trying to save the world by doing this either.
As far as do what you can for each individual child without being one has to be idealistic, but without being sentimental about it. That must be a hard thing, kind of, to divorce the reality from what your dreams or hopes.
Yeah, it's hard when a case is dismissed and it's maybe not what you would have wanted for the child, and especially when you see a child that does have a lot of potential, and you know what they're going back to, and you know that's as good as it's going to be for that child. And I always hope that they do remember us, or the foster parents, or whoever has given them a break, and will be able to pull on that in their future lives when they are able to get out and work on their own.
Maybe 20 years from now, some child will call and say, you were there when I needed you.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things hopefully the system tries to do is to break some of the cycle of abuse that we're seeing, because most of the parents and the families that we deal with have been abused themselves, abused or neglected, physically abused, sexually abused, and they're perpetrating this on their children, and because it's all they know and it's how they grew up. And I think one of the reasons we remove kids and provide services to families is to hopefully break that cycle.
Do you find that parents want to change, they just don't know how, or is it such a normal kind of thing that...
Some really want to change, and they welcome the help and the support. And then there's some that all they do is fight the system. And I think for me, that's the most difficult parent to work for, because they're not seeing anything about the child and for the good of the child. They just want to get in there and mess up the system, and they're,
Well, the system can be a hard thing to work with. It's very bureaucratic.
The parents that usually we see the most hope with are those that will take some responsibility for what has happened and say, yes, I was a part of this. Yes, I was part of what caused this. And the parents that continue to blame everyone else are the ones that are very resistant, and it's very hard to break that resistance.
That's a real natural human instinct
Absolutely.
to say it's not my fault, it's the system's fault.
But that's what helps perpetuate it too, and helps cases can drag on through court. And if you've got a parent that simply refuses to admit that they've done all these things that they're being charged with, which oftentimes they do, or you get somebody who is into drugs and we'll have them tested periodically and they continually come up positive, so we know they're still taking drugs, and at the same time we're still the villain because we won't give the kids back to them, which also means they don't get all their support checks back to them either. And those can be the difficult cases because you know that those kids can't go back to that home. And you're kind of torn sometimes because I've got another case where I've got the mother who is really shaped up and the father who has done zip, and they're still living together, and of course the children are in foster homes. And on one hand you'd like to give the children back because the mother has made an honest-to-God effort to change things, but on the other hand you know that the father's going to be there to influence it, and it'll be right back to the same garbage it was a year ago when we took the kids. So until both parents can act as a team, it's just simply not going to work, or until they separate and the mother decides to take the children on her own, it's not going to work. So those are some of the things that you do get into that get a little bit trying, and you have to keep yourself a little bit removed from it, otherwise you become too emotionally drained. And you have to remember that if you burn out on this, you're gone, so you're better off not getting quite so much involvement in it on a personal basis, so you can just simply go and do your job.
Lynn, do you offer volunteers an opportunity to get together to talk about their cases or kind of have some mutual support?
We do. We offer ongoing training several times a year with different topics available. We just had a training session on children and attachment. This month we offered tours for our volunteer of Corner House, which is an agency that interviews and examines children who have been allegedly sexually abused. We're offering a roundtable discussion for our volunteers in January, which gives volunteers a chance to come and chat with each other and get support and talk about what's going on and complain if they need to or whatever. And the other thing that we do is we offer each new volunteer a mentor. And the mentor is an experienced volunteer in the program who can connect with the new volunteer on a one-to-one basis, and that person can call them at home, talk about what's happening for them, and get support, get ideas, and so on. So,
have you used your mentors?
I am a mentor. I didn't have one, and so I got involved in the Guardian program also that way because I felt I could have used one. So I've got some new guardians that I check in with, and they seem to be but the training is really wonderful, and they seem to be very, once you go through the training, it's a feeling, all right, now I'm going to go get them, and I think that's what the training offers in the end. Also, I wanted to say, as a guardian, when we work with our clients, I think one of the good things about it is we are not paid. We are volunteers, and once they understand it, sometimes it seems to take a while for them to really understand it because they're meeting so many people through their child being taken away. The foster parents, the social workers, that this and that, therapists, and because we are not paid and we are not working for anybody but ourselves, really. After a while, they kind of change their tune. I find they do,
and you gain a little bit more respect.
Yeah, you get respect. You also, they open up a little bit, and they kind of can't believe that you care about that much to spend time with them or with their child, and you're not being paid. And so that's a great feeling as a volunteer. You get a lot of payback. But
I think that's one of the things that makes the position unique. The court felt that everyone else in the process had a spokesperson. When a case came to court, the parents were there with their attorney or attorneys, the social worker is there with the county attorney. Who was there representing the child? Who was the voice of the child in the court? Who brings that child into the courtroom? And so that
must be such a frightening experience for children to go to court.
Well, they don't necessarily go into the court. You speak in their behalf.
They have the option to go to court when their 12 years are over.
But they know you talk to them about it and say, I'm going to be there.
And is there anything you'd like me to say for you? And
do you find that the children you're working with are real streetwise and sophisticated in terms of, they're not the sheltered child who...
No. You can take the average kid that we deal with that might be 9 or 10 years old. That's probably about as sharp as maybe we were when we were 17 or 18. It's a total different world. It really is.
Maybe sharper than we'll ever be.
They have seen it all. They know it all.
Absolutely.
Cynical children, children who don't have much hope for their own futures?
Actually, I don't know. I think I've been real lucky in mine.
don't think
They're
I have,
pretty good kids.
Yeah, I enjoy I've got a lot of children, and I really enjoy every one of them. There's not one that there are a couple I don't like, after an hour. I'm exhausted after being with them, but I really, really enjoy them.
Are you encouraged to do any socializing with children? Take them out?
Yeah.
To a degree, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, that's how you get to know them.
Yeah, I think it's necessary to take them away from wherever they are, either their home or their foster home. Take them someplace, because I find that when you visit with them in the home or in the foster home, well, there's usually so much else going on, but there's also that other adult kind of looking over their shoulder, listening or whatever. So we go out and get something to eat. I eat a lot.
Yeah.
Sometimes we go just for a walk, or depending upon how old the children are, go play in the park or
Go to the
video.
library?
Yeah,
We're
go.
always-
Oh,
Well,
yes,
every
go to the
time.
library.
I mean,
Every time, right?
yes.
Well,
We don't go to the video store. We go to the library.
no. One of your volunteers, Mel Goldstein, is a guardian ad litem, and he suggested that we need to do more promoting of library things
Absolutely.
on this program. And one thing that does occur to me, if children are having problems and needing to understand a little bit more about themselves or about what might be going on in their parents' lives, of course, information is a way. So,
Yes,
Absolutely.
and you can find that. at the
Actually,
library.
I did get a good book. I did. Now, this is a long time ago. Got a book out of the library. I
Thank you,
did.
Jennifer.
I did, and it was about a child who had been taken, who was in a foster home. And we did read it. The problem is you can't take a book out and know
Well-
that it's going to get back.
Well,
but we did
that's,
find
you
it
know,
and did
not-
take it out, and the foster mother did return it. But that's right.
One of
That
the
is a
best
good
ways
idea.
to connect with children, especially the first few times that you meet them, is with a book. And if there aren't books in their environment, then I was a volunteer in the program for 7 years before I was hired as the volunteer coordinator. And I used to bring books and read to children. It's a great way to connect. Sometimes they can get into the story and talk about that, and you realize that maybe they're talking a little bit about themselves
It's a
also.
little bit removed from their own
Yeah.
situation.
It quiets them down
Reading is-
also.
yeah.
So I think it's a great way to connect with kids.
Yeah.
Thank you. You had asked if we were going to have a commercial interruption. Lynn.
There we
That
have
was
it.
And this was it.
And this is
Back to the program.
Most kids love, they'll bring a book and crawl up into your lap at a certain age. They really enjoy.
I think you
That-
must find that children really want the attention of one adult who really is interested in them and has
Somebody
the
who cares.
time.
And
Absolutely.
has the
Cares.
time,
Yeah,
exactly.
because in most of the situations, they really don't have an adult in their life that really cares, and that does make a difference.
After the particular case has been settled, then do you lose contact with the children, or do you find that you're getting a longer and
Or
longer
getting a case
list?
settled.
It takes forever. Yeah.
Takes forever.
Yeah, it does.
I don't think I have. I've had maybe 13 cases total, and 2 of them have settled, and those were brand new babies, and I never really got attached in that. But the others seem to, just when you think they're going to, or just when I think they're going to settle, somebody throws a wrench into the works, and
It leaves these children in
get-
such a state of uncertainty. They must just kind of have lumps in their stomach all the time.
Well, that's part of the problem, is that if you could give them some stability, it would help an awful lot. And I think that's where we're probably different than the social workers are, is that their main job is to try to reunite the family. And keep in mind that they are paid, so they have to have a caseload that's whatever's there, they've got to do it. And most of them that I've seen do a terrific job, but at the same time they're overworked. They've got more cases than I think that one individual could really handle and do a good job. And they would like to see the families reunited as soon as possible, because that's their whole purpose of life. And so that's once in a while where you will come into a minor conflict, sometimes a major conflict with even a social worker, is that you may decide that no, it's not. It may be best for the entire family unit to put the kids back, but they're actually more stable in the foster home right now, because they have a stable life. The parents really aren't stable like they should be at this point in time, and I'm going to object to having the kids brought back. And so you do run into that type of thing from time to time. But
So you yourself are fighting the system in a way.
oh, sure,
Yeah,
yeah.
That's
yeah.
But that's
Absolutely.
part of what's kind of fun about the job, I think, is that you can be on your own and either on everybody's side or against everybody, and it's fun.
And you don't have to worry about your job, because as a volunteer,
Right.
you are independent.
One thing we should point out, I think, is that the court makes the decisions.
Right.
We give input to the court, the social worker gives input to the court, the parents through their attorneys give input to the court, and the court, meaning the judges and the referees, make the decision. So it's when we talk about deciding, we are deciding what our recommendation is going to be, and then we give that recommendation to the court.
You probably always need more volunteers.
Absolutely. I'm
And
so
you're
glad you
really-
asked.
Another commercial break.
Yes, and we'll leave the phone number that any of the viewers
Great.
who are interested in finding out more about the program or would like to talk to you about volunteering.
We have a training program beginning January 25th,
It's 1991.
1991, and another.
But you do this on an ongoing basis, so if someone is watching.
Yes, and I didn't mean January 25th, I meant February 25th. And another program that begins April 9th.
And
So-
volunteers may say, well, because I'm working, I can only take care of one child or two children or three children. They're not going to.
We prefer volunteers to have 2 cases, if possible, for several reasons. For selfish reasons, because we have over 300 unassigned cases that don't have advocates. We can't keep up with the number of cases in the
300
system.
children are waiting.
Well, more than 300
cases.
children,
That's just
300
cases.
cases, and there may be 5 children on one case, so it could be very great numbers. Secondly, I think for personal reasons for each guardian, I think it's better for them to have at least 2 cases going so that they don't get too overly involved emotionally, in particular with one particular case. So, but we say that each case usually takes between 5 to 10 hours a month. Takes a little more time right at the beginning when you're doing all your investigating, getting to know everyone, and putting all the facts together.
Do you have to have some flexibility in your work schedule so that if you have to make an appearance in court?
You do, because court, of course, meets during daytime hours. We don't have night court in Hennepin County, even though it looks awfully fun on television.
That might be something that's going to come. Well, we've just got a minute left, and I think there are many other things that we can talk about. Do you have any last statement, any of you or all of you, that you'd like to make?
The only thing I'd like to interject is that if there's somebody out there that thinks they might be interested, you don't have to be an expert. They do a great job on training, and the rest is just through personal experiences. And once you get involved in it, it just kind of comes natural, and it is rewarding very much.
I would think so. It sounds great.
Yeah.
Thank you all very much for being with us on All About Kids today, and thank you for what you're doing for the children in Hennepin County.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gretchen.
Thank you, Lynn MacBean, Terry Flynn, and Jennifer Pierson for being with us. And thanks to all of you for joining us on All About Kids. Please tune in again.
This has been a presentation of Hennepin County Library in conjunction with the Twin Cities Metropolitan Library Service Agency. We thank you for watching, and we hope you visit your public library often.